One, two, three. Hello. Okay, seems like everything's good. Welcome in, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Barry Lyndon. Piece of news, I guess, from today. What's been going on? The Alec Baldwin did an interview this morning with Woody Allen on Instagram Live. I did not catch all of it, but that was one of the stupider but also just funnier things to be watching. I only watched like 2 minutes of it because there was not even look, and I'm not even all out on Woody Allen. I mean, he says he's probably going to do one or two more movies, but that was just such a stupid interview to watch. For both of them to do that was just the dumbest thing, and it sounds like none of them talked about either of the controversies that they're going through, which I just thought was pretty hilarious. But okay, today we're going to be talking about what is kind of becoming my favorite Kubrick movie, and I think is probably not only one of his most underrated movies, but probably one of the most underrated movies of all time, Barry Lyndon. I think starting off, one of the best things about the movie, and one of the things that very few movies do, is that they give us a neutral main character. This is a character who may be best described as the idea that in life there are really no heroes, there are really no villains whenever you're looking at things in the cold light of day. The best people in the world do the worst things, and the worst people in the world have got their highlights where they do very good things. And that's the type of person that the main character of this movie, Redmond Barry, is. He is a neutral protagonist. He is a shitty person. He does a lot of very shitty things, but he's also very charming in the way that I think you could place most people in that category. Most people do a lot of shitty things, but even that's that thing, even the best person that you know, if they were to make a movie about the worst things they've done, they would come across as a very shitty person. At the same time, this is not an anti-hero at all. But just that idea, I think that idea and presenting a character like that, giving across this idea that in a lot of ways, at the end of the day, and this movie especially really just spells this out, at the end of the day, everyone is equal, whether or not you are at the highest of heights, or if you are just at the lowest of lows, you are in amongst total poverty. At the end of the day, we are all just the exact same whenever it comes to where we're all going. So that kind of, and I'm not, this obviously plays into how Kubrick makes movies, how he tells stories, and I'll talk more about that at the end. But in terms of this movie in and of itself, you have a very God's eye view of this story, which feeds into viewing him as a neutral protagonist. That's why a lot of the coldness comes from that. A lot of Kubrick movies have that. It has this coldness. And this movie, I think, shows that as well, the way that you are looking at things from very high up. You get that with the narrator as well, in which you are being told things that are going to happen in the plot coming up. Like, instead of actually experiencing everything the way the character does, the narrator is actually giving you the information well before the character even experiences it. Whenever it comes here, let me check. Hello, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think we're good. Whenever it comes to conversations, whenever it comes to dialogue, everything, it doesn't feel fully natural. The dialogue is not 100% the way that people speak, but it's not theatrically put together. The silences that people take, the awkwardness that comes in from conversations, the way that people are not knowing exactly how they want to put what they're saying, but they're kind of masking what they're wanting to do, and you see that uncomfortableness. Like, you get all of that in scenes where characters are interacting with each other in Kubrick films. And you get a lot of that in this one. You get a lot of, I think you get it in a way from this movie that you don't get from other Kubrick movies. And that's that you get this human feeling. The movie is still very, very cold, and you still have that God's eye point of view that makes his movie so cold. But this one, I think, feels the most human out of all his movies. And I think more than anything else, that comes from his dedication, Kubrick's dedication to authenticity, the movie's dedication to authenticity, and authenticity in a way that in authenticity in parts of life that are very, very human. I think starting from the most superficial, you have the costumes. The costumes in this movie, it's the type of thing where whenever you watch bad costumes, they're so noticeable. Whenever you watch a period piece, bad costumes are so noticeable. It looks like you are going to like some cheap museum. Everything's bright. Like Bridgerton kind of has this. Like everything is too colorful. It's too in your face. Like it looks like they're trying to make a point about the costumes. The costumes in this, just the British uniforms, with the Prussian uniforms, everything has like they look new. They don't look like they've been worn for hundreds of years. But at the same time, they do still have a used quality to them, a casual quality to them. And everything looks the way that whenever you come across someone casually, like the thieves that kind of show up in the first act of the movie, what they are wearing comes across as just something that you would casually be wearing if you're in the modern time, if that is a modern time. When it comes to the dresses that everyone's wearing, they're incredibly elegant, but they're not screaming that they're elegant. They're just kind of worn as if it is the fashion of the day. I love that in that layer, on the superficial, on the surface layer, that level of detail feeds into the authenticity. Next, the part that everyone talks about with this movie, the filming, the beauty, the absolute beauty of this movie. George Thoroughbred, I think, is the painter that they were kind of going off of for modeling, getting these wide vistas that have this glow about them. Like the way that the sun and the natural lighting does kind of give this glow across these huge landscapes. And you still get that glow whenever you're getting close-ups of everyone. Everything in the frame is kind of just emitting this kind of soft brightness from it. Yeah, even in like the dark scenes, everything. And of course, the way that it was NASA developed lenses. I got these lenses that were, the f-stop was something like 0.7, meaning that the cameras would drink in so much light that they would film these interior night scenes with nothing but candlelight. So many of the scenes, they would go with nothing but natural light because they wanted for the interiors to get the light, that they wanted the sets to be lit in the way they wanted the sets to feel the exact way that they would have felt back then. And you're not going to be able to be bringing in a shit ton of electric lights in order to get that feeling. So they got NASA to give them these lenses that just, you're able to just put a few candles in front and it kind of lights everything up, but it gives that really nice gradient between what is in the background, what's in the darkness, and then what's being highlighted in the foreground. I don't think Amadeus is another one that does that very well. But being able to get that, and that's the thing, digital photography is really not able to capture it in that way, because when you're working with film, the blacks in particular with film, they feel so, they go very, very deep, as opposed to digital where everything is, focusing much more on the whites, and it's just not as nice. It's not as good. So whenever you get the candlelight, and it's just and people's skin in this one, everything, it gives you that glow that I think you kind of connect with much older paintings. And it's part of this whole thing. This is one of the few movies that when you watch it, it does really feel like it brings this old world to life. It feels like you're walking into a whole other world. The next one, and this is still really more on the surface level. But the music for this is just one of the most captivating soundtracks of all time. What I mean by that, obviously, you've got things kind of like the opening, the Sarabande that kind of plays throughout the entire piece. It's very striking. It's like this harsh. The string music is so harsh in the way that the movie begins. It pulls you in. Kubrick always does a great job with the music of really punching you in the face with the parts of the music that are meant to really just be thunderous. Like the movie has a thunderous sense, but at the same time, the much mellower portions, kind of more of the Irish sounding music that plays throughout the movie. It has a way of, it's not necessarily the Sarabande that plays and the variations of it. It's great music to really listen to on your own, as is all the music. But that stuff I think is really fun to listen to on its own. The rest of it is not really something you would think is captivating on its own, but it marries so well with the picture, with the images. I think in terms of soundtrack, this is one of the best compilations of music to go along with a story. The emotional moments, the way, I'm going to give spoilers, by the way. I think from now on, from this point on, I'm going to be giving spoilers. So you've got like 5, 4, 3, 2. The Sarabande, the way that they use it whenever it's Barry Lyndon's son's death, it's absolutely incredible. The ending, the way that they use just these few chords in the last scene, and I'll talk more about the last scene. I think it's an example, probably the best example of what is done so wonderfully in this movie. But it's drawn out, and the few chords are played, but they change in the way that they're played throughout the scene as a way to kind of go along with the emotion that all the characters are are showing with just by glances in that last scene, which is so absolutely wonderful. And Kubrick talks so much about stories really needing to play out much more as music than theater, where you're doing much more beats of a plot. And I think Barry Lyndon, I think, is one of the best examples of a story unraveling to music in a way that is much more. I think it's probably one of the more successful times that his stories have kind of unraveled themselves like music. 2001 is another one, but I'll talk more about 2001 later when we talk just more about Kubrick. The next one is the actors. The actors in this movie are probably the best acting of the entire cast in a Kubrick movie. Obviously, you're going to have things like you've got Shelley Duvall and I'm just going to talk about Kubrick movies throughout the whole thing. You've got Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson and something like The Shining that really stand out. Those two really stand out. Does Tom Cruise stand out in Eyes Wide Shut? Maybe not. You've got Peter Sellers is really the standout performance in something like Doctor Strangelove. You've got James Mason as someone in Lolita. But this one, from Marissa Berenson to Ryan O'Neal to the actor that plays the chaplain to even the actor that plays O'Grady in The Shining, from the from the mother of Barry Lyndon, all the way down to the son. There are so many roles throughout this entire thing, and everyone is I think bringing the, I would say, best acting chops of a Kubrick film across the board. Of course, Leon Vitali as well stands out as Bullingdon. Incredible performances from everyone across the board. The Chevalier, who of course plays the old man in Clockwork Orange. Everyone just, and it's not just the performances. There's something about the actual look of the actors. Take somebody like the old man from Clockwork Orange who plays the Chevalier. The way that there's just, first of all, just without saying anything, the Chevalier does not have a lot of lines. You've got the actual look of the actor, something that even the Coen brothers do very well. The actual look of the actor is highly important and has to connect with the character. He does a great example of that. But then when it comes to the acting, they deliver in the way that they're supposed to at a very, very high level. You have, I think, the probably best example of that is the chaplain, who has this just strange, like, waspy look. The way his head almost does, it comes in at like a perfect point. His chin is almost at like a perfect point, and he looks like a wasp, and he's this just constantly hovering protector of Madame Lyndon. And their attitude, whenever it's challenged, they have this like sting about them. But it's not just the look; it's the actual performance goes along with what that look brings. That's the Chevalier has that exact same thing. It has like this Winnie the Pooh like character where like you feel a comfort around them, and then anytime that they actually speak, the look is kind of mirrored with their action, the way that they actually carry out their performances. Barry Lyndon by Ryan O'Neal. I don't think anyone's a huge fan of Ryan O'Neal, but in this movie, he does a fantastic job in this movie of really being just, I would say, a normal dude in terms of, yeah, we see them go about being very shitty, but at the same time being very charming and being very just aimless. Just they have this general sense of what they want to accomplish in life, but they have no real plan. There's just something about an everyman quality to Ryan O'Neal's character, and that might be like his look does kind of have that interesting that actually Kubrick wanted. Warner Brothers told Kubrick, if you're going to make this movie, a period piece with this budget, I think it was something like $11 million, you got to cast. They gave him like the top 10 most bankable actors at the time. And it was between Ryan O'Neal and why in the world am I forgetting the name of, it's on the tip of my tongue. I've got no idea what's going on. Head of the Sundance, Robert Redford. Why am I blanking on the name of, it's got to be Robert Redford. I know that it's Robert Redford, but it is Robert Redford. Robert Redford just wasn't into it. He just didn't want to do it. And so Kubrick went with Ryan O'Neal because that was the next most bankable person on the list that made sense in the time period. I think Charles Bronson was also on the list, but like, Clint Eastwood was on the list. So Ryan O'Neal was the only other person. And I think he actually does a very good job. And of course, Kubrick has that kind of way of working with actors where you just do take after take after take. He gets like 50 takes and then they get something that's usable. So then you use that. Ryan O'Neal does do a very good job. But that's the not just the characters, but the actors, the casting does such a good job of bringing the world to life. Also, humor, just in terms of emotion in general throughout the movie, the use of humor in this movie is very funny. Examples: whenever he meets the Prussian woman that he has an affair with, hilarious the way that they both kind of come to an understanding that, hey, we're both, the way that she kind of asks him, "You're lonely, aren't you?" It's hilarious. The trick, when he realizes that a trick has been played on him in order to get him to leave at the very beginning of the movie. The way that they show him falling in love with his cousin at the beginning of the movie is so awkward, but also just very funny. The situation he gets in, the way that he's just kind of playing this young man who is so stupid, but he does it a very good way. Again, you get that kind of God's perspective where the movie does not spell out for you, you have to laugh here. It just presents the situation as it is. You see the emotion in Redmond Barry, while at the same time you see and you understand the emotion that's going on, the anger that's going on, but you still laugh because of how ridiculous the situation is. And that distance, while yes, it does make it feel cold at times, I think because the plot and the story of this movie deals with so many people, like a lot of Kubrick movies don't really deal with people as much as ideas. This one deals with so many people and it does a good job presenting them. I think that this is I think the humor when it happens comes through in a very interesting way. Not even like Doctor Strange of that I think kind of shows you you're supposed to laugh here, you're supposed to laugh here. This just kind of presents humorous situations and you kind of watching them again, you find more and more in them that is funny. But then the sadness, there's so much sadness. This movie is it is very sad in a lot of ways. And also, I think this is one of the better art house movies. I think this is the type of movie that fits the term of art house a little bit better. It's not just, you know, you're not just focusing on one element of movie making and kind of accentuating that, kind of whether it's technicality, whether it's one emotion. This movie does really put so many ranges of emotions on the table, but it kind of takes a lot of time to go through them. And that's kind of where the art house section of it comes in. But the sadness of the movie, the sadness, again, spoiler here, but the sadness of the death of his son, the sadness of the betrayal at the end. The ending of this movie is probably one of the best endings that Kubrick has because it's totally visual. The way that it puts all of the emotions of the entire movie like right in front of you in a very raw way without any dialogue, purely visual. Lady Lyndon is signing away all of these checks, signing away all this money, and she just sees the receipt that she's paying for Barry Lyndon to just be paid off, to not to go away. Her husband is just being paid money to never return because he's just a scoundrel. And just it's like 2 minutes of no speaking, but you're seeing so many emotions play out just from glances, and it's one of the things that Kubrick is the absolute best at, and not a lot of people do that. This is actually Scorsese's favorite movie of Kubrick. He doesn't. There's snippets of him talking about why. I would be interested in hearing his takes on that last scene because I think that it is probably one of the last scenes in movies of all time because it works on only a visual level and gets across so many emotions that we just don't see a lot of that ever. And I do think looking back on it, this is probably my fifth time seeing it, first time seeing it in the theater. I think that this is the movie. Like this is the movie that makes Stanley Kubrick the master that he is. Look back to what he had done before this. You have Doctor Strangelove, you have 2001, you have A Clockwork Orange. Very, very good movies, great movies. 2001 is my favorite movie. Very stylish. The themes are very heavy on dissecting humanity. You don't have a lot of his movies, though, that really focus on the heart of people, the heart of characters. The closest would be with Lolita. But this is the movie where he really gets to the heart of all of the characters that he's dealing with. And he still has that detached coldness that he's famous for, but I think this is the one where he does actually get the closest to his characters. And because this movie was not a financial success, he goes on to make The Shining after this, which is still great. But again, this is the one that did show that Kubrick was able to actually get close to his characters, which is not something that he's very famous for doing. And the result, I think, is a very diverse movie that touches on a lot of very interesting emotions very, very well. Again, I mean, compared to someone like Christopher Nolan, who is great at what he does, but I don't think that he's going to really be considered a master, 50 years after he's gone, unless he's able to make a very character-centered movie that is able to evoke a lot of emotions, a lot of heartfelt emotions. And if we didn't have Barry Lyndon, I don't think Paths of Glory, although, is a very good example. But again, I think the mixture of the style that he got after things like 2001 and Clockwork Orange, I think that adds a level of power that you don't get from like things like The Killing or Paths of Glory. While Paths of Glory is still a near perfect movie, I think something like Barry Lyndon bringing that style and that humanity into it is what makes this. I'm still gonna have to rank this among kind of where I rank his movies, because I was not expecting seeing it this last time for it to kind of jump up so high. It's absolutely fantastic movie. Bye for the Hobbit. Good to see you. The movie it's absolutely epic. I saw it on the big screen for the first time. Just you feel that level of scale whenever you watch it at home, but it's a whole other experience seeing it in the theater. It's really fantastic. If you have not seen it, then do please check it out. What's up next? 4th of July coming up. Probably going to do a review later this week of Team America World Police. But if you're seeing this, then leave a suggestion for what you would think would be a better 4th of July movie. So we'll see. We'll probably have a few. So have a good rest of the week. See you later. And if you have not already, please subscribe to 5 Minute Critic for future updates on reviews and movie news.